Hey there, it's Tess Rouse and Christina Beatty. We're the co-hosts of Authentically Wild, a podcast that's here to shake up how you see life, relationships, and your healing journey.
This isn't your typical feel-good chatter. We're diving headfirst into the raw, real, and transformative conversations that can change everything you thought you knew about yourself and the life you're currently living.
Pulling back the curtain on our day-to-day lives, talking about relationships, parenthood, personal growth, trauma, and spirituality. Both of us have transitioned from lives that felt stuck and inauthentic to discovering a way of living that's raw, honest, and deeply healing.
The breakthroughs that we've had, they've been wild. And they're exactly why this podcast exists. We knew we couldn't keep these conversations to ourselves.
So if you felt lost, stuck, or like there's something more out there for you, this is your sign.
It's in the hardest, messiest seasons of life that we discover our truest selves. But here's the thing, the choice to dig in, that's all yours, baby.
So buckle up,
because shit's about to get wild.
Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the Authentically Wild podcast. It's Tess here. I'll be doing a solo episode today entitled Carrying the Uncarryable, How to Hold Your Grief Without Drowning. So today I'm opening up about my personal journey with grief, the loss of someone who shaped my life in countless ways. Losing a parent is a different kind of ache. It's a rupture in the fabric of your daily life, a loneliness that begins to settle in your bones. Grief has a way of arriving when love has nowhere else to go, especially when you've spent your days caring for others, holding both your pain and theirs. So in this episode, I'll be sharing what I've learned walking this path, the difference between finite and ambiguous grief, how our brains wrestle with loss, and a few of the rituals that have helped me honor what's missing. So if you've ever felt your heart grappling with absence, know that you're not alone. Let's talk about it today together. All right, so thanks everyone for tuning in. I don't want to say I'm excited to share this episode. Sometimes, Christina and I get super excited about a topic because it's been maybe a challenge in our life and we've come through it and we just can't wait to share that with our audience. However, as all of you know, listening to this podcast, vulnerability is a major piece of what makes this podcast unique. And sometimes that also means sharing the challenges that we are currently going through. And so just 2 months yesterday, I lost my mom, and she died unexpectedly due to a health complication she had been diagnosed with less than a year prior to, and it's, we don't even need to say it. I think losing our parents is something we all know is inevitable, but nothing prepares you for that. And I thought because I had walked the path of grief before, I had lost a really close friend in my early 20s who died in a car accident. It's so different how it hits you for each connection in your life. And so losing a parent, for anyone out there that is going through grief, whether that's losing someone in a finite way to death or an ambiguous way, meaning maybe a loss of a relationship. So maybe that person still exists in this world, but they aren't currently in your life the way that they used to. Or again, for someone who really resonates with my story in losing their mom or their dad or that parental figure in their life. I think this episode's going to be really helpful. It's probably going to be quite emotional for me, but that's what this work is. It's about sharing sometimes the raw and real parts of our journey. And I do that so that there are other people out there who hear this, who maybe can find some hope and some peace in the things that I'm about to share today. All right, so let's jump in. So for those loyal listeners who have been maybe listening from the beginning of time, I just want to say that I have talked about multiple mother figures in my life on this podcast today. I am talking about my stepmom who married my dad when I was super, super young. She has been in my life since before I could even remember my earliest memory. So To me, she is what I would describe as a mother figure. She was kind, loving. She's the person who held me when I cried. She helped me through all the biggest challenges in my life. And see, I'm already getting emotional, which I knew would happen. Maybe not in the introduction, though. And so that's who I'm speaking about in today's episode. So just not to get confused, I used to just always call her Jan. And I used to introduce her as my stepmom. And I remember this one trip we took together. I introduced her like that to someone, and the person said to me, "You can just drop the step. She's your mom." And ever since then, I've really referred to her as my mom, because it's true. You know, sometimes we are dealt cards that maybe we wouldn't choose. But I do believe certain people, different souls are brought into our lives for a purpose. And she was definitely brought into mind to show me what true unconditional love meant from someone like a mom. And I'm so grateful and so thankful that she blessed my life for 35 years. I'm eternally grateful that she chose me as her daughter, that she chose to really take on so much responsibility when she didn't have to. So in terms of how I'm doing, I'm obviously still grieving. You know, I think grief is one of those emotions that it's not really something we work through. It's something we learn to carry. But especially in the beginning of anyone's journey, it can feel just insurmountable. It's so heavy. It's so heavy to carry. And it's not like other emotions. You know, when you're angry, you feel angry until you don't. When you're sad, you feel sad till you don't. When you're frustrated while you're working through something and then it's over. Grief, it just sneaks up in the most random moments. When you're at work, when you see a little mural that reminds you of them, when you're recording a podcast and the tears start flowing. You know, and this journey has really reminded me why I do the work that I do. I don't think I would have survived the last few months, just emotionally, being able to actually hold it together as a mom, you know, in my career, all of those things, if I didn't have the outlets and the understanding and the awareness of my body, of my nervous system, my beliefs, if I didn't have those things. So let's jump into this. And something also I just want to mention for those out there who are grieving but are also caring for others that are grieving, know that you have to make time for your grief. And we'll jump into that in just a minute here. But grief is really an emotion that shows up when love has nowhere to go. When something or someone we deeply cherish is suddenly just missing, just gone. And our heart is forced really to reckon with the shape of that absence. And we'll talk also later in this episode just about how our brain actually has to rewire to that as well. So there's a couple of variations of grief. The first is finite grief. And so that's the type of grief that we experience after a clear, defined loss, like the death of a loved one. So there's this concrete event that happens, sort of a before and an after, right? It marks when I started grieving. It's absolute, and it's typically recognized by people around us. And I will also just say, you know, in those first few weeks of loss, you almost feel like, okay, I can do this, because there's so many people giving you space to grieve. There's so much understanding. There's so much checking in. There's this sharing of stories, which for anyone listening that maybe hasn't dealt with this, but you have someone in your life who is grieving, know that when you bring up that person, when you talk about your memories or your stories, that helps. It really, really does. Because when you are grieving, you feel like you are the only one noticing their absence, that you're the only one hurting. And it really does help to talk about that person. So we are grieving what was, and we process that over time. And we eventually learn to carry it as part of our story. Ambiguous grief, however, is more complicated, less recognized. And I talk about this I've obviously gone through this part of grief as well. I'm sure most people have. You think of any breakup you've had or a loss of a friendship. You know, it could even be about an experience or phase of your life. Maybe your kids have left for college, or you've lost a job that was part of your identity, that there's grief there as well. And so this is this type of grief that I'm talking about. And so that's when it's the grief we feel when loss isn't clear cut or it's not fully acknowledged by society, like losing someone even to dementia, addiction, or estrangement, the loss of a relationship, a dream that never fully had closure. So the person or the thing it may still physically exist in this world, but they're no longer present in the way that they once were. So there's no defined ending, which can really make the grief confusing, ongoing, sometimes invisible to others. And I almost feel sometimes that we actually go through sort of finite grief and then ambiguous grief and then back to finite. That's what at least I feel like right now. It's very much a yo-yo of emotions where there's part of me who grieved really, really hard when it first happened, like just how shocking that was to me, to my body, to my nervous system, to my heart. And then I think there's moments where I numb to feeling it. And there's almost this sense of hope, like if I just wake up from this nightmare or I just go to sleep and I wake up tomorrow, she'll just somehow magically appear in my life. And that's sort of some of the feeling of ambiguous grief, right? Let's say you break up with someone. Well, they still exist. There's still a possibility you could get back together. There's still a possibility they could message you or text you, whatever it may be. And so I think finite grief is so hard to deal with because your brain wants to go there. We want to find a solution. We want to find a way to change the outcome of this event. And then you get to these moments where you realize it's not even a possibility. This is absolute. And those are the moments. Those are the moments that you have to honor. And so especially if you are someone who is caring for others who are grieving and also trying to grieve yourself, know that when the body gives you that moment where reality has sunk in, where you feel this surge of sadness, of grief, of sort of just heartbreak, honestly, surge up through the body. You feel it in your chest. You feel your throat begin to sort of constrict. You feel the welling of tears behind your eyes. You get a choice in that moment. You can push it back down. And there's a reason we do that. Because if I can push it back down, I don't have to accept that it's real, or I can allow it even for just a second. And sometimes those seconds turns into minutes, turns into an hour of sobbing. And then you go back to your life. And then they come up again and again and again. And so grief is this really interesting emotion because it doesn't dissipate. It doesn't soften. Your ability to carry it, your ability to acquaint with it, like it is now part of you, that's what changes. And so for anyone who hasn't experienced grief or this is your first time, know that it does get easier, but it's not because it goes away. Your ability to carry it changes. So let's talk a little bit. This always helps me too, to know, like, when I feel so overwhelmed from the emotion of grief, like how this works in the brain. And I've talked about this actually in a past episode. I love Andrew Huberman. He's a neuroscientist from Stanford University. He's great. He has a podcast as well. And he uses this same brain science to understand when we lose someone, meaning like when someone breaks up with us, why it can feel so hard and what's going on in your brain to remap. Because think about a relationship maybe that ended 10 years ago. You've probably fully moved on from that. But maybe if it was 3 months ago, why you still are like, why am I still thinking about them, et cetera, et cetera. Well, the same happens for finite loss as well. So grief involves a very complex neural process. There is the emotional side of this, but there is also a brain mapping side to grief. So I want to understand that and unpack that a little bit here. So our brains form deep associations between loved ones and our daily experiences. So when someone that we love passes away, even though we logically know that, our brain continues to anticipate their presence. And what this leads to is this dissonance. Dissonance means two conflicting beliefs happening inside of us, and our body doesn't like that. So this leads us to dissonance where our expectations and our reality conflict with each other. So this can result in feelings of numbness, right? I've gone through this in the last few weeks where I just don't think about it because my body almost can't accept that this is real, or a feeling of overwhelm. And so that's when those little moments come up and we allow them. It feels like a dam opening, right? A flood, a surge of grief coming through. Because in our minds, our brains are trying to understand, like, how do we fix this? How do we remove this dissonance? How can our reality and our expectations come into flow with one another? So as the brain struggles to reconcile these conflicting signals, you are on a journey. And I've referred to this in other podcasts as how we remap our relationship with someone is space, time, and closeness, right? And so the stronger all three of those things are, the longer and the harder this rewiring process takes. Space, meaning physically, how often did you see that person, whether over FaceTime, on Zoom, like did you work with them? Or were they your mom? Were they your child? All of those things. Were they, a past partner of yours, right? Physically, where did you expect them in your life all the time? At all the events, at all the, like every weekend soccer game. So we associate those spaces with that person. Time, how much time did you spend together? So you think if this is someone you called every day, if this is someone that lived with you, you're used to spending a lot of time with them. And closeness, what was the depth of your relationship? And so for me, with my mom, Jan, she's seen me through every challenge, every struggle, every moment, and she's held all of that for me. There are very few bonds I think we carry like that. And I also just want to mention here, in terms of, I think, in our brain, how this works, although I'm a grown adult and I have my own family, my own kids, my own partner, the loss of a parent specifically, something I didn't quite consider, was just how lonely you feel. Again, I think we all know that we will lose our parents at some point, if sort of the process of life unfolds how we expect it to. But I think we are always little children inside. And when those pillars of your life are just gone, there's just this feeling of being alone. Even though I know I'm not alone. I have so many great, amazing humans in my life, so many amazing connections. There's just something missing. It's not just a friend that's gone, and I'm not saying people are irreplaceable, but you have lots of friends. You only have one mom. You only have one dad. Or that person that you are bonded to in that way. And when it's over, it's over. And that's really, really hard to accept.
Hi, my friends. We're going to pause here for a moment and just let you know, if you're needing deeper support on the journey, some of the ways that you can work with us.
Hey, thanks for listening. It's Tess here. I know life's challenges can feel overwhelming, but through breathwork, there is a way to find clarity, release those stored emotions, and feel more at peace. I offer one-to-one group and online sessions, and I'm excited to share my upcoming digital breathwork audios, perfect for when you need support on the go or in your own time. So if this speaks to you, visit my website, tessrouse.com, or connect with me on socials at @her_earth. Let's breathe through it together.
Hi, friends. Christina here, helping you connect within yourself, develop your intuitive gifts, and tap into your deeper power and purpose is just some of the beautiful work I do with clients. I offer one-to-one deep dive soul coaching and one-to-one readings with your choice of an Akashic Record soul reading or an intuitive guidance session with spirit. And if you're ready to go all in, I offer my soul empowered membership, which includes weekly live meetups, access to all of my online programs, my entire library of guided meditations, one-to-one support from me, as well as community connection with others on the soul journey. You can visit my website, rootsoflovecoaching.ca, or connect with me on my socials at christina.soulempowered. I can't wait to support you deeper on your path.
And now back to the episode. And just lastly, this piece around the brain and how it's remapping to grief. Huberman talks about how grief activates areas of the brain associated both with pain and reward. And so there's this dual activation that happens within our brain hemispheres, which explains why grief can be so consuming. It's not just this emotional pain, but also this longing for connection and joy, right? With that person that was brought into our lives. And so I think when people explain grief is just all the love you have with nowhere to go, that's why. You're looking to give that and you can't. And I believe that's also why it differentiates it from sadness. It's a completely different emotion. And I was quite taken back as I was going through this in the first few weeks. And there were moments where I felt also really happy, right? You reflect on all the memories, all the great, amazing moments that you had with this person, the connection, the joy you shared, the laughs, the hugs, the talks. And like, it just really filled me with love. There's also, that also brings on this feeling of guilt. Like, how can I be happy in this moment? But understanding that the brain is activating both of these spaces can really help you to make sense of the feelings that are coming up for you, right? Especially because grief is it's not a constant. It ebbs and flows. It comes up and then it doesn't, and then it comes up. And that just happens for a long, long, long time. So I want to read to you something that I wrote. I've been really getting back into writing poetry as a way to, I don't know, it's kind of like journaling maybe. But yeah, poetry is just, to me, it's art. It's something that always speaks to me at an emotional level. So I'm writing this for the ones who are grieving. And so I'd love to know your thoughts about this little piece. So here we go. For the ones grieving, it is an emotion you release, work through, or come to terms with. It's not a puzzle to solve or a wound that simply scabs and heals. Grief is a companion, a shadow that slips into every tomorrow, an invisible stone you find tucked in your pocket, no matter how many times you empty it. No amount of pushing, no conversation, no decision will undo this reality. You are gone, and I am here, living in the echo of your absence. It's so abrupt, so final. One day you were here, a steady lighthouse, and then in a blink, the shoreline disappeared. I'm left with muscle memory that hasn't caught up, reaching for your number, expecting your voice to bridge the distance, but the line is empty, humming with silence. My body knows now I must learn to live with this, a new landscape carved by loss. There's a room in my heart, forever yours, filled with love that now has no landing place. It churns inside me, restless and unmet, like a river dammed, pressure mounting, fierce and heavy, aching for release. But my body is wise. It knows the river's force would sweep me away if it were unleashed all at once. So the grief leaks out in unexpected moments, small and unpredictable. A storm breaking through a crack in the dam, washing the dishes, driving the kids to school, a butterfly drifting past the window. Suddenly you are everywhere and nowhere at once. This is my new reality. Hello, grief. You surge into my throat, burn behind my eyes. the tide rising, threatening to spill over, and for a moment, I stand at a crossroads. Do I bolt the door and swallow the ache because I am not ready, because hope still tricks me into believing tomorrow might return you to me? Or do I let myself taste the salt of it? Just a drop, each wave as fierce and potent as a rattlesnake's sting, rendering me momentarily paralyzed, exposing hidden parts of myself, raw and aching for your warmth. Grief is not something to be fixed, but a wild, untrainable animal we learn to walk beside. Gentle when it can be, feral when it must. It is both a weight and a witness, reminding me that love, in its truest form, is never lost. It simply changes shape, asking us to become oceans, able to hold it all. Thanks for listening. I just want to wrap up this solo episode with 2 pieces of advice, lessons, tools that you can use as you navigate your grief or prepare you for what is inevitable. It's really, really important, firstly, that you let grief have its place. So like I said, you will feel these moments happen where you are at a crossroads. You can push it back down. The body will allow you to do that because maybe you're not ready, but it will not go anywhere. It will sit there waiting for you. And so the sooner you can allow those moments to happen, slowly tasting them, allowing yourself to have those longer sessions of reflection, crying, whatever it is for you, being angry, frustrated, you will feel better. And I know that seems conflicting, but honoring your emotions is an act of love for yourself and the person that you've lost. There's no need to rush through it. There's no need to be strong for others. Grief is your body and your heart's way of processing profound love and loss. Especially if you are caring for others who are also grieving, you have to allow yourself to honor that. There are people out there who are carrying decades worth of grief because they have not allowed it. When they feel themselves at that inflection point, they choose to push it down. I promise you, it does not go anywhere. It will sit there waiting for you. It does not dissipate. It does not soften. You have to address it. You know, actually, a few months before my mom passed away, and I think this really impacted how I approached the last couple months. A friend of ours lost his brother. And I remember seeing him even a few weeks later, and I thought, wow, like, he looks well. And I know how emotionally devastating that loss was for him. And, you know, I remember asking him, like, what are you doing to like process? Because you look good. And I meant that in a complimentary way. And he said, you know, every day I take time to grieve, whether that's going to the cemetery or reflecting on him and allowing myself. Sometimes he would even be like, yeah, I can't hang out tonight. I'm just not in a good place. Or he would tell everyone, hey, I'm not doing well today. I'm happy to come, but like, don't expect me to be overly joyous. He just really honored his experience. He made room for it. And so I just encourage all of you to do that, because when you're grieving, life doesn't stop. Everything stays in motion. People, social, your career, the demands of life, all of the things. And, you know, we make time for, you know, really exciting, monumental phases in our life, birth of a child, our weddings, you know, all of those things. Yet when the hard pieces come, we just put it on our back and carry on. But it can actually be a very different experience if you can find moments even to honor it, to allow it to come up. So that's my first piece. The second and the last piece I'll leave you with is to create your own personal rituals of remembrance. So like I said, life continues on. People stop calling, people stop messaging, people stop checking in, and you feel alone in your grief. So finding ways to honor and remember your loved one Again, if you're dealing with ambiguous grief, maybe it's having like a closing ceremony of that, allowing yourself to process those pieces, even if you're still grieving that person and you've moved on. Lighting a candle, journaling, having a picture beside your bed, speaking to them. Again, I'm talking about more finite loss in this way. There are so many civilizations who honor the dead, right? Your ancestors, we make memorials for them. It is a daily ritual and practice. Just because they are gone from this 3D world doesn't mean that they can't continue to live on in your energy and your love and your emotion, right? Allow yourself to keep their memory alive while also acknowledging your own healing process. Thank you all for listening to this solo episode today. Know that my heart goes out to you if you are someone who is dealing with grief right now. If you have questions or want someone to talk to, please reach out to me on social at Her Unearthed. You can also send me an email, hello@tessrose.com. And again, there is an ad in the middle of this episode that talks about the different ways that you can work with Christina and I. So if you feel that you don't have someone in your life or you're not sure how to implement some of these resources and tools, or you don't even know where to start in processing grief, please reach out to one of us. Emotions are our space. They are our bread and butter, and life just keeps delivering so that our capacity to understand and relate is very, very fruitful for you. So take that resource. We both have a lot of content on our social media. Look there. You are not alone. Please reach out. Thank you all so much. If you found this episode helpful, or if you know someone who is going through this, please send it to them. We appreciate all of the shares, all of the likes, all of the comments. It does not go unnoticed. I hope you all have an amazing week. Love you all so much. Thank you. Bye.